Hello and welcome to Talking TSM, the Game House's talk show about TSM's LCS team. I'm Robert Haynes. I'm your host and your guide into the world of the TSM LCS team. Couple quick announcements. Got a lot to go through today. Very excited. We always have a lot to go through because, well, we get to talk about TSM, so it's good. I was right last week in the draft buff update. I have fallen to Mallory. Mallory came, saw, and conquered. And I'm now 2-2, back-to-back weeks. I'm hoping to make a trade before the weekend gets here. I don't know. I'm not feeling great about it. I need a big win to, start trying to push towards the playoffs. But we'll just have to see. Kind of sad, but it is what it is, I guess. So this is the big announcement though for today. There was a suggestion on YouTube that maybe I look at splitting this into 2 episodes instead of just 1, because there's a lot to talk about, and I have thought it over quite a bit, and I think I'm going to try doing 2 episodes. So the idea will be that I'll get initial reactions from the weekend that comes out on Mondays. I might even record on Sunday nights, honestly, as the last game is finishing up. And I think that'll be good. Hopefully allowing me to have maybe a little bit more, even a little less time necessarily to think on it, which could be fun and, I don't know, a little more interesting. And then I'll be prepping for the next weekend's games on the Thursday shows. So we'll still be getting one that comes out on Thursdays, and we'll be getting one that comes out on Mondays. It will allow for more time and analysis on those specific games, and it will allow for the episodes to hopefully be a little shorter, but more often. So that's the goal. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on it. So as you're listening, let me know on Reddit, let me know on YouTube, or if you are in the Talking TSM Discord, which I hope you all are, then you can let it be known there as well. So this will be the last episode where I do recaps and previews. Oh, and I have one more announcement too. I was able to be a part of the Mini-Media day for the LCS. They split up really into 3 days. Normally, they do this before the season, but I guess the lock-in kind of messed things up, and so they gave us one this week, and I was able to sit in and get some answers from PowerOFEvil and Bjergsen. We will be talking about that in the middle section of this show. Okay, we're almost 4 minutes in. It's time to dive into our, as brief as I can make it, recaps and thoughts on last weekend's games, which, hallelujah, the team not only won, and my hope was, please let them get to 3-3. At least at 3-3, we can feel a little bit more comfortable. I anticipated a loss against TL, but spoiler alert, they went out and won all 3 games. What the heck? It was awesome. So, going into the GG game, looking back at it, the early game was still pretty useless, especially against a team that's not nearly as strong as TSM. Laning, experience, you name it. They didn't do very well. They had a terrible Drake fight that, they were both coming in from different directions. Nobody seemed to have the same target. Next thing you know, they're basically getting wiped off the map, and they give over a pretty easy Drake, and things are starting to look bad. It's GG, and we're like, not GG in terms of good game, but it's Golden Guardians, and they're kind of the worst team in the LCS right now, as a lot of people had predicted. I'd hoped that they'd be better. I even had them better in my power rankings 2 weeks ago because they got a nice win over Immortals, where they came back, and I was like, okay, maybe this team will be better than I thought, but they're starting to show their inexperience. Anyways, what kept us in this game was towers. Our macro game for the last just for the last 2 weeks, even in the losses, our macro game has been really strong. We're really good at moving around the map, getting certain aspects of the macro that many teams don't think about, specifically vision and understanding where to get our advantages from. And that makes us really scary. I don't know that I see a team in the LCS moving around the map like we do. And that is extremely exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit more here. But continuing with the GG recap, again, we are continuing to take towers even though we're losing in a lot of other places around the map. Then we're able to sneak that Baron, turn it into a Drake, win a couple fights, and then win the game. And when I was looking at this draft, I had a lot of questions about it. I liked the Gragas, but the Gragas and the Bard, if they're not timing things correctly, Gragas can ult and knock people out of Bard's ultimate, then we're sitting there like, what the heck? That looked terrible. Spica, I like on Olaf. I know he doesn't love the champion, but, he looks kind of comfortable on him and is able to make a lot of plays. And there are still some champions I'd rather see him on, including one that he ends up playing in the TL game. But Olaf's strong for right now. We'll see with the new meta that will, I believe, be coming in the next week if he's still as strong. But it's a good pick for Spica. PowerOFEvil and Syndra looked really solid. 5-0-5, and that's not really just everything. He ended up getting a couple of his kills late, which we anticipate with a 25 and 30 minute Syndra. But more so, the interesting part for me was his positioning being solid and just his understanding of what he needed to do in this game to be useful. My biggest question mark came from the Ezreal. I had not expected this pick whatsoever. I should say this. I saw this Ezreal in solo queue with the Duskblade, Chempunk, Chainsaw, Sword, and the Ravenous Hydra. And I was like, man, that's really strong, but, I feel like it wouldn't be as good in the pro scene. How wrong was I? Holy mother of God. Lost was just pouring out damage. I mean, unbelievable. He did 23,000 damage in this game. The next closest person was PowerOFEvil's Syndra with 16k. And then on the opposite side, a Blaze Olive 18k and Stixay with the the new Senna build 17k. I quickly want to talk about the fact that it's so cool to be seeing these new builds coming out that we just didn't anticipate. The Ravenous Hydra, Duskblade, and the Senna, Kraken Slayer, Ginsu's Rageblade picks. It's starting to make the role kind of evolve because I think everybody saw the benefits of things like the 3 items that were intentionally made for 80 carries, but we didn't see some of the ways that some of these things could be used. And so, pros are pros for a reason. They're always looking at new things, and PowerOFEvil talks a lot about in the media day, he talked a lot about, trying new builds and really trying to, find new things that could be OP. And man, I mean, it's so cool to watch. It's one of my favorite things. And for Lost to pull that out in a really important game for TSM, because remember, they barely win the CLG game. They're 1-2. They're heading into a game where they're expected to beat Golden Guardians, and Lost is like, hey, I'm going to bring out this Ezreal, something that we haven't seen in the LCS yet. A couple of, I think the LCK might have played it once, and maybe somebody in the LEC, and again, I saw it in my solo queue game, which obviously, for a gold level player, means we're going to see it in the LCS. But the point of it is that he pulls it out in a crucial time and has a really strong game and reminds us that he might be our carry. It was something that I've talked about with a couple different people, including, people who we've had on the show, in Aaron and Mallory. Mallory was a big fan of Lost, got me on the hype train. And Aaron even said, I just don't know where the carry is going to be on this team. And I think all of us would agree. We didn't expect it to be Lost, but Lost might be the carry for this team. He looks really good, and he looks extremely confident. So I'm very happy. We see this. They come back in a game that they probably shouldn't have, but they were just a better team. So they come back, they win. They're 2-2. We go into the TL game, and I'm already like, all right, 2-3, that's fine. We need to just go in, beat Immortals, and we come out of the weekend at 500. Well, how wrong was I? Holy moly. We get into the draft, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching, and I'm trying to get a lot better at figuring out the way the draft works. So last year, I started really having a good understanding of it. This year, and I'm saying at a pro level, there's a lot of depth in areas that you have to start looking at, and as when you're analyzing pro games. And I'm still, pretty novice, I would say, at it. I'm learning more. I'm getting better at understanding it all. I've been playing the game for 10 years, but I played the game for a long time. Oh, shit. Excuse me. Phone dropping there. But I was able to play a lot of these games, without an understanding of, how do I put this? Without an understanding of exactly what was going on. I just like to play. And then over the last 4 or 5 years, I've really started to dive into the esports scene. I'd watched casually. I'd enjoyed it. But now I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this draft and I'm talking to Brock, who does all of our C9 content. And I'm like, dude, this game looks TSM favored. He's like, well, yeah, it kind of does. I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have a much more solid team fighting, and pick off ability. Whereas it looks like TL was just trying to poke and do as much damage as they can and then hope that Alfari with Kennen, can get behind them. The problem is that even if he does, either Huni, PowerOFEvil, or Sword Art are going to stop him or push him out, or even, Spica's going to hit him with the Swirl Seed and ult, and he's not going to have a chance. Or even Lost can jump right out of it, right? So, it felt like TSM had advantage at the draft, and we saw as soon as the game got started, we're all sitting there, and it's still, kind of a boring game. TSM, kind of what they do. Some early kills. They get a Rift Herald that they're very good at. They're very good at getting Rift Heralds. I believe they have 75% first Rift Herald in their games, which is the best in the LCS. They have great control over it, and most of the time they're not having to fight or die over it, which was something that they had some problems at in the lock-in tournament. It's still, as LS has said, you have to weigh the risks versus the reward for getting it, because it doesn't provide experience and it barely provides any gold, and it doesn't do as much unless if you take out a tower, which, a couple times TSM has gotten the Rift Herald and kind of fudged up the where to drop it. A lot of times they'll drop it right in the middle of a fight and then it just dies instantly. So they take that, and then, they're scaling. They give up the Drake, get another kill onto Jensen, which is looking good. PowerOFEvil is getting really good at sweeping Zoe's with his ultimate, Then the next thing they have a team fight, right before the Drake, basically. And TSM just wipe PowerOFEvil, quadra kill, and we're sitting there like, oh my goodness. TSM's up in gold. They're up, in kills. Next thing you know, they're starting to snowball it. They're taking more towers. They're taking Drakes. And, it's just, I don't know what to say. They're playing really well, and I'm sitting there and continue watching, and they're just building the gold lead. And it feels like TL just, They're realizing they don't have anything that they can do. There's no way for them to get in. They just got to hope that Jensen lands a Sleepy Trouble Bubble or that Core JJ can land a hook. None of those things really happen. TSM play a really smart, relatively safe game, and they end up just blowing them out. They win by 13K gold. Their vision score is outstanding again. And they dominated. They dominated TL. Now, TL have some issues. So, they're 3-3. They are definitely losing some games, even though they came out initially and everybody was super excited. They win the lock-in tournament, and I'm sitting there like, oh, crap, like this team's going to be pretty good. But TSM just out-macroed them. They did. And I was really worried about Huni on Gnar because, obviously, all of us were. He hasn't exactly been playing very well on him. And the next thing you know, he's playing back. He's playing smart, right? He's not that he doesn't normally play smart, but he's not putting himself, he's not taking risks. And for him right now, I think that's kind of the route he's got to go. I think that's who he is as a player. He's got to allow the rest of his teammates to carry, and he can make the plays later on in the game, in the mid and the late game. And he's sacrificing, a little bit of what he's been known for, but I think he likes to win more than he cares about what he's known for. And I love that about him. I think that's really, really I think it's taken him a while, but I think the rest of the team, including Bjergsen, probably sat down and were like, hey, Huni, like this is your role now. This is what you are. And that's okay. You could be very good at that. Impact has made a lot of money and won championships doing what you are starting to do now. Let PoE, Spica, and Lost carry. You make plays. You have good mechanics. You're a very smart player when it comes to team fighting and to getting around the map. You don't have to dominate in lane for your team to be able to win anymore. And he looks good, and this team's macro is, oh my god, it's so good. All right, so we head into the Immortals game. We'll get through this one real fast. Love this comp. Absolutely love it. You've got the Shen, who can not only keep anybody alive, but can jump in with the Hecarim, whenever. I love that combination. I do feel like the Victor didn't make a lot of sense, but, it's good into Insanity, into the Orianna specifically, and he's able to kind of protect himself, should Revenge or Xerxes or even Destiny jump on him. He can throw down his trap, slow them at least, give his team time to come in. But the real star of the two games was Sword Art on this Pantheon. And I don't know that he's going to get it anymore, so we might as well enjoy it. If he is able to, they should just pick it to death. Pick it until they can't pick it no more. Because he looks so good on it. He's setting up stuns. He's getting around the map. He's laying down wards at an unbelievable rate. In my latest piece, he was laying down wards, 73 wards to opponents' 57. We are winning the Vision game at such an incredible amount. And it's almost specifically all on Sword Art. And then Lost just plays an outstanding game. Again, 8-0-3. He's jumping in. He's realizing when he can, when he can't. He's taking good fights. He's doing a lot of it on his own too. And again, this kid is probably our carry. I mean, he just looks so good. So good. And he allows for Sword Art to move around the map without taking bad fights or without doing anything too stupid. And that's what you need out of an AD carry who has to play weak side sometimes or who has to play without his support. And he's still coming out ahead in CS. It's awesome. And Huni just played this game so well. Every time that TSM was taking a fight, as soon as it looked like they might be losing, here comes Huni to the rescue. And I love this pick on Spica, the Hecarim, just jumping into game, jumping in at any time, any game, and being able to have an impact. And that's what he needs. You know, he was setting up solid ganks. This game was never in question. They gave up one tower. They didn't give Immortals a single kill until 21 minutes in the game. And they just dominated in every aspect of this game. And it was so nice to see. So overall, my impressions from the weekend. TSM played like we hoped that they would in the very far future. You know, I was like, man, if they can get this right before playoffs, that'd be great. If they do it during playoffs, that's fine too. But this team is starting to come together. They're picking comps that make sense together. And they're playing them the way that we hoped that they would. Comms are clearly better after the GG game. There was still plenty of issues in that game, right? And seeing this has made me optimistic, but cautiously so. Yes, they are on a 4-game winning streak, but 2 of those games were pretty rough, even in their wins. And, you know, their games against FlyQuest and C9 were terrible still. But they are trending in the right direction, right? It's like they started off terrible, then they're barely pulling off games, and then what you would expect is that they'd have some closer games but still win them. You know, not like near death games, but, you know, get a little better. But they jumped from like that barely winning to we are going to dominate. It was like something between Friday night and Saturday night just clicked. And the next thing you know, this team is just on a roll. They look so good in their last 2 games. But I want to emphasize, we have to be cautiously optimistic. They've yet to prove consistency. 2 games is not consistent, for me at least. And winning 4, when 2 of them were as bad of wins as you could possibly imagine against CLG and Golden Guardians, is not something that I'm going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, that's what we were looking for. That's good. No. They have to come out this weekend, and they have to dominate. Or at least just get solid wins. And they have a hell of a weekend. But we're not going to go into that yet. Because, as I alluded to at the beginning of the podcast, I was able to sit in on the Mini-Media Day. And I was able to ask Bjergsen and PowerOFEvil some questions. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play the audio from these clips. Okay? This is the first time I'm doing this like this. I'm going to explain to you guys my question because I fumbled it a little bit in the second one. I wasn't anticipating getting my second question answered. At the time I did, they were trying to make sure that everybody got one question in first, and then they would give you a second one later. And I didn't expect my second question to come up yet, so I fumbled the question a little bit, and I sounded kind of dumb. You can listen to Travis Gafford's whole recording of it that he put on his channel. I sounded a little silly in the second question. And I know everybody's like, well, why do you ask if they could hear your mic? Well, it's because if you sit there and you ask your question and nobody's saying anything, you're going to sound really stupid. And you can't tell because people don't understand that we don't get to unmute our mics. It's done by the PR firm that does it. So we don't know when we're exactly able to talk. So that's why. So if anybody's asking, there's the reason. So my first question is I asked him, hey, it's your first year in coaching. What has been the most challenging aspect of coaching so far, and how are you learning from it? And here is the clip of his answer.
What's been the most challenging? I think running reviews is really challenging because it's not just about telling people what they did right and wrong. It's really about being on the same page as a team and learning, kind of building up from your fundamentals and learning things kind of slowly and building the blocks so that the players really see the game the same way. Of course, every player has different levels of game knowledge about different points of the game, so we really have to align and start from the bottom up and build everyone's knowledge together from the bottom. And I think I came in skipping some certain fundamentals that I thought weren't really necessary, but I realized that it's just really important to even start at the very basic things that might seem obvious, just so that the team is aligned from the ground up. And once you do that, then you can start working on the more complicated things. But if the foundation is shaky, because everyone's foundation is slightly different coming from all these different teams, it's going to be really hard to build on the more kind of complex concepts and strategies.
All right. So a lot of interesting things there where, he's talking about reviews. Now, when I watched TSM Legends last week, that was one of the most important things that I noticed. It was just a small moment. But after, I think it was either their first or second loss. I think it was their second loss. Bjergsen says, hey guys, we're going to step away. We're not going to review right away because in my experience, reviewing right away just doesn't do as much as if we take time to digest it, rewatch the game ourselves, and then come back and talk about it. So when he gave this answer, I was actually really excited because I think, Bjergsen obviously being a former player and doing it as well as he has for so long, he has an idea of how things work best. When did our team, when he was playing, when did TSM play its best? When were we reviewing our games? When were we seeing the issues? And one of the things that a lot of people, including myself, don't do enough in League of Legends, is look at our own play. Right? I was told by a friend, Luke, who hopefully, if he's listening to this, I'm sure he'll bring it up this weekend during Clash. But he told me, he was like, dude, listen, I've been rewatching some of my games and I've been learning a lot. And I've been playing much better since. Again, I'm giving a gold person's perspective, but I'm trying to relate it to you all so that you can also make these connections when you're watching. And he's like, man, I've been getting a lot better. And so I've come to realize that I probably need to watch my game. And there's a reason why they do it as well. They look at where were these small mistakes? Where were these communication mistakes? And I'm sure that they're able to actually listen potentially to their comms even at the same time and see, okay, well, we're talking about this or we were talking about that, right? And so when he's talking about running reviews, being on the same page as a team and players seeing the game from the same way, they have to align. And that was where the comms issues come from. Those were the issues that we were seeing with this team through the first couple weeks and the lock-in tournament. Dives weren't lining up. They weren't playing the same type of League of Legends. It felt like everybody was doing their own thing. This was something we talked about, I believe, last week, and something that we had noticed. As a coach, your job is to make sure that everybody sees the same end goal and the same path to get to that goal. And it doesn't matter what sport or esport that is in. That is something that is extremely important. And for Bjergsen to already be seeing the ability to check these things out and understand that, hey, I thought that this made sense because I just did it so naturally. But maybe my players don't because they've been in different environments. They've had different experiences. And so for him to see that and realize that he has to build a foundation of how to just review the games alone. And some fundamentals on what to look for and how to build ourselves up as a team. And start with the basics that he thought was obvious is such a refreshing thing to hear for me as a fan and somebody who, attempts to analyze. It's so awesome. I love it. I think that was such a great answer. I know a lot of people flame. They're like, well, I want deeper analysis. Well, for TSM fans like us, that's the kind of stuff that we need to hear. We need to have an understanding of where is this team's mindset. What are they doing? What is Bjergsen doing? Because we don't know a lot about coaching in League of Legends in general and in the LCS. And those are the kind of things I want to hear from a coach. I want to hear his mentality and what he's doing to get better. And we can see that his answer and what he's been doing is clearly having some success as the team is looking better. they are fundamentally playing in a much more cohesive manner. So I love it. All right. Now we're gonna head into the second question that I alluded to, that I was unfortunately not exactly prepared for. And so I had been thinking about it. I'd raised my hand. I was trying to take a little bit more time to formulate exactly what I wanted to say, but then they caught me off guard. They're like, "Hey, Robert, you're next." I'm like, "Oh no, okay, all right, I better go." What I asked about was, it seemed like the team was getting along really well. Like, the Hooney and Spica back and forth banter is hilarious, and the parts of PoE and Sword Art and Lost and Bjergsen, like, they're all laughing together, and the coaching staff looks happy even during their losses. Like, they all seem like, sure, they're a little worried after their games, right? Sure, they're upset, and from watching their losses, like especially against that C9 loss, like all I can think of is PoE just slumping over in his chair, like, what is going on right now? And I'm going to remember that, and we should remember that moment, that C9 loss where they just got their butts handed to them. That might have been the turning point for this team. And the team atmosphere is something that's important. If you don't like the people that you're playing with, we saw what happened last year. And this is nothing against Kabe or Bio or Dardock or even Bjergsen or BB, right? Like, but it felt like they just weren't on the same page. They didn't seem to exactly dislike each other, but they didn't seem to like each other. Like, it always felt like Kabe and Dardock, and even Biofrost to a certain degree, were almost annoyed by BB at times. And BB's a big personality, and I miss that boy so much sometimes. I'm cheering real hard for him over with Schalke. But, it just didn't feel like the team was gelling, right? And even last year at the end of the year, like when Doublelift comes in and Spica, like they seemed to all like each other, but it always felt like Doublelift and Bio and Bjerg were just on different levels and on different pages in terms of their understanding of each other and the way that they worked well together. And they had their own idea of how the game goes. And it didn't exactly line up. It just felt like they were just solid players who knew what to do to win. Because that's what Biofrost and Doublelift and Bjergsen had done. And BB and Spica, came along for the ride sometimes. They contributed, obviously, but they just all seemed to be in a different area. So I was like, what is this team atmosphere like? It seems like everybody's getting along, but talk to me, a little bit about it. And, I asked PoE as well, because he's there, and I'm like, well, obviously you're playing, so, this is also for you. So here's what they had to say about the team atmosphere.
I think it's really important to care about each other outside of just teammates, or what in a lot of other teams it kind of feels more like coworkers, because a lot of teams you just kind of come in for practice and you go home when practice is over. But I encourage the players to stay after practice, spend time with each other. They go to the gym together, eat food at night together, and have occasional kind of team dinners at our strategic coach's apartment, just so we spend some time outside the game together. It's not all fun and sunshine. I mean, we definitely had to address some. Of course, we were playing really poorly during the lock-in, and we had some rough weeks of practice, and it was affecting our team environment. But that was part of what we tried to change going into this week, is just having more of an encouraging environment for improvement. And I think the players care for each other. We were just getting into some bad habits, but we changed it up really fast. And I think, again, our environment has been really positive recently and helped us a lot going into week 2.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think out of my experience, having a team where all the 5 players and the coaches like get along well and are friends in and outside of the game is normally way more successful than if you're just kind of playing because you're teammates, and because you're way more openly able to feedback someone else, and it's just like you kind of blindly understand each other, like how you function in the game. And obviously for us as well, I think we're still not 100% there yet, but we're improving from week to week, and I think we definitely have the personalities to, get there.
So there's Bjergsen and PowerOFEvil talking about being friends, right? Like being more than just coworkers. And I think that's an aspect of not just sports and esports, not just competitive environments, but just a business. Everything works better if the people are friends, to a certain degree. Obviously, it makes things like cutting players harder. I reference Moneyball not once a show, but semi-regularly now. A lot more early during the off season. But one of the things that Billy Bean in Moneyball, the general manager of the Oakland Athletics, he doesn't allow himself to get close to his players because he knows that he has to make tough decisions for them. Obviously, it's a little different being a head coach because you got to like your players. You got to stick up for them. You got to do what you need to do, right, to get them to perform. And so seeing it in that way is, I think, really important for this team because they are a bunch of likable people. They all have interesting personalities. They're all people who seemingly are just friendly. Hooney is hilarious. Spica is absolutely hysterical. I do wonder, nobody asked if I almost asked if Bjergsen got Spica's shoes that he had promised him after they won. It'd be really funny to see if he did. $600 shoes or whatever they were. But, they care about each other. And I think that that's an important thing. And I think that's something that Bjergsen brings to the team that maybe other coaching staffs have not. And that's nothing on like Parth or Zix or, Song. But it feels like he's able to relate with these guys. And I've been able to see that in, the 3 or 4 TSM Legends that we've gotten. That's one of the things I've noticed about Bjergsen is it feels like he's their friend. And to a certain degree, that's really, really good. Obviously, we still want them to respect him, which they do. I mean, everybody respects Bjergsen if they've been in NA for any time. And, I mean, Sword Art, talked about at Worlds last year how much he respected Bjergsen and TSM. Clearly, he's, like, living out almost like a mini dream. You can tell it sometimes. Like, he's just so excited to be there. And so, it's not all fun and sunshine, and I'm sure, the login tournament was doing a lot to their mental, and clearly they had things to work out. And that must have been what they really worked on during those 2 weeks. Maybe not their play as much, or maybe they just weren't as strong as we thought, but, they started to trust each other. And there is that innate mindset that you have to have. You have to know almost before your teammate does something, what they're going to do, so that you can also do it at the same time. That's when teams look like they are on the next level. It's something that Doublelift talked about too, when they switched Biofrost out for Treats. Treats was playing pretty well, but it didn't feel like he and Doublelift were on the same page. They were good, so both of them were succeeding in their own roles, but they weren't playing well as a duo. But, when Bio was in, the team just felt more cohesive because they could anticipate each other's movements to a certain degree. And it feels like this team is starting to get there. Now, they're not going to be able to do that in 8-10 weeks, however long they've been practicing together. Because they still only just met each other at the beginning of January. But they are starting to get there. You're starting to see Hooney's ability to jump right in with Spica. You're starting to see, PowerOFEvil take more plays and make more plays. You're starting to see their Baron and their Drake control and their Rift Herald control and their ability to move around the map is starting to turn into a symphony, and it's starting to all flow. They're starting to move around together, and they're looking strong. And this was the thing that Aaron and I talked about, after the lock-in tournament. This team may not necessarily have the best players at their position. Okay, like I'm not going to tell you that I still believe that maybe outside of Sword Art and Spica, and I guess maybe PoE, yeah, probably PoE because Jensen hasn't been playing all that well. And neither has Perks really to a certain degree. Demonte's probably been the best mid laner in the LCS so far this year. But either way, the whole team doesn't necessarily stack up yet individually in their role. But if they can all come together and if the coaching staff can have them clicking on the same page and understanding each other, they can be the best team. They don't have to necessarily be the best individuals, but they can be the best team. And if they have this atmosphere where they trust each other and that they are working together, that's what we need. And I do think that this also probably ends discussions for Hanser and Cody's son. Because if their goal is to really bring these 5 players together, find cohesiveness, and as long as they're all liking each other and they're playing for each other, right? It's that have the person next to you's back, right? If you build that foundation, you don't want to break it down. You don't want to pull a piece out and plug something else in. The strongest teams in traditional sports, in esports, and in any competition of any type are the ones that work best together, not individually. And replacing even one piece of a cog that has worked or is mostly working is not something that you want to do. And I know that I am now semi-contradicting myself, although I still said, don't pull Huni, don't pull Lost, give them their time. And I was critical of the drafts and critical of things that Bjergsen and the team were seeing. And it's not going to take 1 or 2 really good games to turn my entire opinion around. There are still issues. They still have a pretty bad early game. They still take some fights that are questionable. They still make some moves that are questionable. They're not a well-oiled machine yet, and you can't be that without winning multiple games, or even not winning, but just playing strong games in a row. Like, if they lose this weekend, even if they go 0-3 this weekend, which, oh God, I hope they don't. But even if they do, as long as they look like they're on the same page and they're just losing because, maybe a couple plays don't go their way or, some unexpected things happen, that's fine. As long as we are seeing them build off of these last 2 games, I'm happy with their performance. And they're putting themselves up there for a true a true top team right now. Like, they are currently, in my opinion, now they're tied for 3rd, but Dignitas has only beaten EG. That's the only good team they've beaten. They've lost to basically everybody else. So, and their 3 wins are against, pretty bad teams. TSM at least, beat TL, which actually I guess I would put them about the same. Holy crap. They've really only beaten Golden Guardians, CLG, and Immortals, the 3 bottom tier teams. So this week is going to be important. I guess I still see them as being 3rd currently. But I think that 100 Thieves and Cloud9 are on their own level right now. And everybody else is playing catch up, including TL and Evil Geniuses and TSM, and even a 4-2 Team Dignitas. All right, so we head into the last topic. Well, technically. Looking at their 3 games this weekend, this is going to be probably, if it's not their hardest weekend, it's pretty close. The only way it could be any harder is if EG and Dig were replaced by TL and C9. Because they get Evil Geniuses on Friday, 100 Thieves on Saturday, and Dignitas on Sunday. The combined records of these teams are 12-6. It's pretty good. 100 Thieves at 5-1. They're only lost to Cloud9. Dignitas 4-2. And Evil Geniuses at 3-3. So, let me make sure my math was right there. Yeah, it was. Okay, good. Doing quick math. anyways, heading into the Evil Geniuses game, they have been struggling. They started off, with a loss of barely losing to 100 Thieves. They go out, they are able to take down FlyQuest, who had just taken down TSM. That first day, they're able to easily take down Golden Guardians, and then they head into this next weekend. They beat Cloud9, and I'm sitting there like, holy moly, this team's solid. They're 3-1. They've only lost to 100 Thieves, who's the only undefeated team at that time. And then Saturday rolls around, and the whole world turns on its head. Immortals beat Evil Geniuses. TSM beats Team Liquid. Cloud9 takes down 100 Thieves. And we're all sitting there like, all right, what's going on? Evil Geniuses they looked really bad in this Immortals game. Terrible. They just weren't on the same page. They weren't making good plays. And you think, all right, well, they're going against Dignitas, a team that people don't expect to be very good. And then Svenskeren and Jizuke and Ignar just feed their butts off. Holy moly. They're just getting beat at every level. Jizuke's running into towers and just dying. One time getting executed. The next time he's running up. He doesn't have enough abilities and he just dies. And Saligo gets super fed. And Dardock's playing a weird Kane game, which actually worked out. And Neo continues to carry for that team. So here's how I see TSM beating Evil Geniuses. I think the first one is you got to let Jizuke make his mistakes. I like Jizuke. I think he's a good player, and I think he is constantly getting crapped on for making stupid plays. And he's kind of like Huni. Their ceiling is so high, they can just beat about anybody. But their over-aggression can hurt them. And if Jizuke isn't being aggressive, he's not normally as good. So he has yet to learn what Huni is currently learning, which is you don't have to dominate and bully lane and make all these insane plays for your team to be good and for you to be good. So I think for TSM, let his over-aggression put EG behind. Let him push PowerOFEvil in and then gank him from all sides. Don't give him a pick, hopefully, at least, that he can, get out of things very easily. The next thing is they need to focus on getting Sword Art a pick where he can affect the other lanes more easily. That means no Leo, no Alistar. I know that he can roam on them. I know that he has been good on them in the past. That includes when I was talking about at the beginning of the season. This is a good meta because those champions are in. He just hasn't looked good on them with this team. Maybe it's just the team style. Maybe it's that his style to a certain degree is clashing. Whatever. I would rather see him play the Pantheon if it's available. Have him, running around, making plays, jumping down on people, Grand Star falling. The Galio that I have been just ad nauseum asking them to play. He would love that pick. He'd be so good for this team. And I'm going to bring it up every freaking time before they start playing him on a regular basis because I think that Galio would be to a point where it would have to get banned from this team every single game in the first bans. And that would leave things like the Pantheon open, or that would leave things for Huni or for Spica in the jungle. I would love to see it. Please. Please, 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 please. Play it. And I'd even be okay with Bard again. I didn't like it the first time he played it, but Sword Art brought it out a second time. It is a good champion for him, and he's able to get in and out of lanes really quickly, which is the whole point of Bard. And his ults were stronger. He had better communication with the team. As his team's communication continues to get better, that's a pick you can play more often. And it's a good one. He can really affect the team. And, even though he was missing, I'll be honest, in that game, he missed a lot of Qs. Not something that is ideal, but whatever. I want to see him play it. I want to see them continue to out-macro their opponents, specifically EG. I think Jizuke and Impact love to stay in the side lanes once the mid-game hits, so they should be prepared not to team fight. They should be prepared to have Huni and PowerOFEvil playing in the side lane, and then they're going to have to win the 3v3 in the middle. We'll see Jizuke pull out the Rise. We'll see Impact do what top laners do and stay in the side lane. So I want to see TSM prepare for this. I want to see them prepare for a 1-3-1. And if they want to do team fighting, if they're so determined, then they have to have a better early game and they have to have Drake control. Because the only way that you can beat a 1-3-1 team is if you have Drake control. If the Drakes are going even, or if you're losing in Drakes, then teams can 1-3-1 you to death, and there's nothing that you can do about it because you can't really draw them to fight outside of at Baron, which at that point they're pushing you so far back into your base, it's hard for you to even contest a Baron. So I want to see them continue the macro. I do think that they can win this game. I do think they win this game. And, they'll need to be careful, but I do think Lost is specifically going to be key. Because if he can outduel deftly, then we're looking good. Okay, heading into the 100 Thieves game, I'm just going to straight up say this at the very beginning. I think this is a total toss-up. I think it's 50-50. I think if TSM play the way they did against Team Liquid and Immortals, I think they can win this game. I think if they play even just a little bit less than that, I think they can lose. So there's not a lot that 100 Thieves really does wrong. They're a strong team, and yes, they sometimes play some chaotic mid in late games, but their early games are normally strong. They're very aggressive. They know how to play around each other. Damonte is truly becoming a Doinby of the West, and I know that may be sacrilegious to some people because I know how good Doinby is, and I'm not saying that Damonte is as good as Doinby, but he's playing a similar style, and he's finding a lot of success for it in the LCS. And for those who don't know that style, it's more of a tank and supportive role where he roams a lot, right? He will give up tower plates. He will give up his entire tower if it means that the rest of his team are getting fed, or that he's getting fed from other lanes and they're getting their advantages as a team. So for TSM, they need to not allow Damonte to do that without being punished severely. They need to get a lane bully that scales, because the one thing that they did lose for the 100 Thieves, like one of the reasons they lost in the C9 game, is that while Galio is a great pick mid, and again, I love Galio, he does fall off really hard. I mean, really, really hard. And so for TSM, they want to make sure they have something that scales, and they want to make sure that they're pushing him into his tower. You don't let him roam. Don't let him get around the map. Do not let him make plays. Don't let him get set. Don't let him... I would actually just ban out a lot of potential champions from Damonte. And then just counterpick him. And don't allow him to do anything. Hopefully Azir doesn't get banned. I have a feeling that after that last game, it's going to be hard for me to see Azir getting through for PowerOFEvil. But hey, if it does, then take it. Take it right now, because he looks strong, he understands the pick, and it works well with the way TSM's playing. As I said at the beginning, TSM are going to... sorry, I'm reading this part from bullet points. They're a tough team for 100 Thieves, and TSM are going to have to be on the top of their game. I think that they can also out-global them, and that was something that 100 Thieves have been doing really, really, really well. They're global alts, and they're moving around the map, and they are picking fights where they have man advantages constantly. I think if TSM can either match or beat them out in global alts and play for towers and drakes, forcing 100 Thieves again to team fight on their terms, then that's a good game for TSM. If I'm them, I'd actually ignore Rift and play completely around globals. Play around Shen ult if they can bring that out. Play around a Galio ult if they can do that. I think a comp of Shen, Lilia. I want to say Galio. No, we're gonna change this up. Shen, Pantheon in the jungle, because that's pretty good. PoE on a scaling champion, a Syndra, and Azir, a whatever it's called. Basically, if they play a similar comp that they did to TL, but they add a global alt, 2 global alts, maybe even a Pantheon and Galio, or if they can get one of them, and just put them, wherever they can. Preferably it's support for either of those picks, but if you can get Pantheon in the jungle, that's fine too. But if they're able to move around the map and they can use their global alts and they can play around them correctly, then I can see them pulling out this 100 Thieves game. But again, I'm calling this one as a total toss-up. I'm not going to say that I know for sure either way, which is rare for me. I will normally, pick wins or losses here. I just can't there. The Dig game should be a win. Just straight up. I know the Dig has looked better. I think that they are vulnerable, though. I think that they are beatable. And I think that TSM is a team that can expose them in a big way. You start off by you don't ban a single jungler because Dardoch has played 10 junglers in 10 games. He's going to play whatever the heck he wants to. There's no point in banning him. What they should do is they should wait for him to pick and then allow Spica to have counter pick. Or, if there's something that's just so strong that they have to take it, then take it. That's fine. But understand that Dardoch's just going to pull out whatever he's wanting to and whatever he thinks is going to work with the team. Sometimes even if it doesn't, he doesn't care. So, they're letting him kind of just make whatever pick he's feeling that day, and it's working for them. So don't worry about banning a jungler. I mean, seriously, I would just leave them all open because then all the OP picks are available to you as well as they are to him. And there's a chance he's just not going to pick any of them. So it won't matter. And knowing Dardoch too, he might be like, well, I really want to try to show everybody that I can just play any jungler whenever I want to. So I'm not going to, pick what's available to me. I'm going to pull something out of nowhere, right? You big brain him because then you pick an Udyr or you pick, an Olaf or a Pantheon or a Hecarim, whatever you can, a Lilia into, whatever his picks are and just punish him for it. I also think you attack the bot lane as much as you possibly can. Get lost ahead. Don't allow Neo to take over the game. He's been playing pretty well. His positioning's been good. And Aframo is clearly just a god-tier level coach. Or just at least a god-tier level support that allows his AD carries to get better. He has done this multiple times now. He's helped Cody's son. Not as much as these last two, but he's helped Johnson. Johnson looked way better when he was with Aframo. And Neo looks really good with him. He may not be the playmaker that he used to be, but he knows how to help these young AD carries get into a position. Like, Neo may have already earned himself as a pillar for Dignitas going forward. That's what they wanted. They want all NA players that can be strong going forward, and Neo might be that player for them. This team actually has been really impressive to me, and it's very promising for NA as a whole because they're 5 NA players and they're 4-2 right now, and they are playing really, really well. But TSM, I think if they attack the bot lane, I think if they're constantly ganking, I think if PoE's roaming, I think if we get Shens or we TP bot lane, just ruin Neo's day. Really focus on keeping him down, and I think TSM can really get themselves ahead. And I know for a fact that TSM can out-macro Dignitas. That's not the kind of team that Dignitas are. They like to win their skirmishes. They, like to play individually still. They're not playing team, but they're playing around Dardoch. They're playing around Neo, but they're not necessarily, out towering people or out draking them. They're winning small fights and then taking advantages wherever they get them. I think TSM cannot, allow them to have those man advantage fights. And I think that they can just out macro. If they play a game similar to how they played FlyQuest and they just make sure that they still have a comp that can scale at least a little bit into the late game, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine because they're going to push them so far back into their base. It's not going to matter. And even if they're able to take a couple skirmishes, so what? As long as this team is taking towers, I think that they can win. So I am picking us to be at least 2-0 this weekend, or excuse me, at least 2-1 this weekend. Hopefully 3-0. Either way, though, being 4-2 right now gives us a little bit of a cushion that we didn't have the week before, being 1-2. So I'm pretty happy about that. You all should be too. And we'll just see how they do this weekend. I'll be honest with you. If TSM come out and play the way they did the last 2 games, and they do it all 3 games this weekend, the rest of the LCS should be scared to death of them. Because that's a team that you don't want to face, because there's not a discernible weakness in their team. Sure, again, they may not be individually as talented as some of these other players, but if they're playing the team game at such a high level, if they're playing the vision game that they have been, controlling the vision game, knowing where their opponents are at all times, and that's how people shut down TSM, is if they can control the vision game. But I don't know how you do that without TSM punishing you at every step of the way. I think Sword Art just might be the best freaking warder I've ever seen. And we all know the vision wins games. It's very strong. I would call it OP. So, if they walk out of this weekend and they're 7-2, it's time to start popping some champagne. Not because I think that they're for sure going to go in and win the LCS championship or anything and go to MSI. It would be sweet. They still have to, if they could beat 100 Thieves this weekend and they can beat EG and they can beat Dignitas, the last person on their, Reaper list, if you're, using that meme of the Reaper, cutting down opponents, would be C9, who they play pretty early on into the second round robin. I believe it would be next week even. Yeah, I want to say it's potentially week 4. I'd have to check. Give me a second. I actually am going to check that. So they get Team Liquid on that Friday in week 4. No, so we have Team Liquid, CLG, FlyQuest. When do they play Cloud9 again? Oh, man. Okay, so they play Cloud9 on March 7th in week 5. If this team... I guess it doesn't matter at this point. Just if they can go 7-2 by the end of the weekend, they are going to be looking like a team that nobody wants to even... Well, they don't want to see them. Let's just say that. All right. Again, this was requested. I'm going to keep doing this for as long as I can. Quick Academy update. They ended up 3-6. They did not look great. With the way that the new system is going, there's 3 tiers of tournaments that you can go in, and somebody will have to correct me if I'm wrong on this. I just did brief research beforehand. The research I did do, though, has me excited about this system. I really like it. It's almost like, weirdly enough, it's almost like the way that the LCS used to be when there was relegation, but for the academy teams. And not that the academy teams are going to be relegated, but the players technically could be. So all 10 teams will have their spot. But what happens is the 9th and 10th place teams, they go into a second tier tournament. They have to win that to qualify for the next level of tournament, which will already have the 7th and 8th place teams in it. And then the top 4 teams, so the top 4 teams from the second tier tournament head up into the first tier tournament, and then after that they go into proving grounds, where basically the top 6 NA Academy teams are already in it. The top 4. Oh, interesting. Okay, never mind. Sorry, I did this wrong. So the way the teams are still going, right? So 9th and 10th place are in one tournament. 7th and 8th place are in another tournament where they're all playing amateur teams. And then the top 6 are already in the proving grounds, which is made up of those top 6 NA Academy Spring teams. Then the top 4 teams from the one tournament, the top 4 teams from another tournament, and then there's a third tier tournament where it has no academy teams in it. It's only amateur teams, and those top 2 get into it. So basically what they're trying to do is find the best talent from these amateur teams, and it makes it so that teams like Supernova and Maryville and some of these college teams too, because it's not just amateur, it's collegiate teams as well. It allows you to hopefully have the best mix of talent from all around the country. I really, really like this, actually. I think this is such a great way to do it. Because, you know what? Even if all 10 academy teams make it in, so what? We're still going to get a chance to see, at least, what would this be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams from the amateur scene, seen playing these academy teams and hopefully pushing them to their limit. I'm really excited. But for TSM, again, they finished 3-6. And so they will, or I guess I'll go through the standings real quick. So the top 6 teams were Cloud9 Academy at 7-2, Team Liquid Academy at 7-2, 100 Thieves Academy at 6-3. Notice a trend there. Dignitas Academy at 5-4, Immortals Academy at 5-4, and FlyQuest Academy at 5-4. TSM, they ended up losing their last 2 games. They had a chance. If they had won their last 2 games, they could have potentially been in a tiebreaker / been in the top 6. But they are 7th at 3-6. CLG Academy 3-6, and then the bottom 2 were Golden Guardians Academy and Evil Geniuses Academy at 2-7. So I would be on the lookout. This new system is actually gonna be pretty cool, and I think it's gonna allow us to really see some young talent that we hadn't seen before. And I'm hopeful that it will allow us to, really discern who deserves to be on these academy teams. Because there are a couple of academy teams, I'm not going to name who they are, where I look at their roster and it feels like the way that the LCS used to do their rosters. Where they just picked up a bunch of young kids and, didn't really, or not young kids, they picked up a bunch of, veterans who didn't really deserve or belong there necessarily, in my opinion. They'd shown what they could do and they just weren't good enough, in my opinion. Again, in my opinion. So we'll see. But there are going to be some interesting, players and stuff already. King and Isles from Australia. Luger from Turkey is apparently pretty good. I want to see Kenvi and Tenacity and Poom. I really like the 100 Thieves Academy team with Golden Glue leading it. Let me see. Is there any others that are... FlyQuest Academy, Kumo, NXI, Tomo. I'm pretty interested to see them. They brought over Dreams as well. Rosethorn and Yoonbi in Golden Guardians Academy. Chime, I really liked Chime when I was watching Scouting Grounds. I don't know. Yon. I talked to him, during Scouting Grounds, and he's on Team Liquid Academy. He looks really solid as well. A true NA talent out of him. And then obviously, getting a chance to see Sword and Fizzy perform would be great. It'd be really nice to see them do some stuff. They're raw, and I don't know how much I like some of Fizzy's decision making, but for TSM Academy, this is a good challenge for them. I'd love to see them make it do really well and make it at least into proving grounds, and then we'll see what happens. All right, question of the week, and then we're going to end this. What do you personally need to see to feel confident that TSM can continue the way they are playing in the coming weeks? So what do you need to see? What is the thing or a couple things that you would like to see this team continue doing so that you can feel confident that, hey, this is the real TSM. This is what we've been hoping for. All right, and with that, if you like this show, please take a second to like, subscribe, comment. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss another episode. I'm still trying to make this the #1 TSM podcast on all podcasting platforms. So if you feel so inclined, please leave a review, especially if you're listening on Apple. Thank you if you do, or if you already have. Please share this with your friends. You know where to find the tweets, at TGH Robert Haynes, at TGH Esports. Use the hashtag TalkingTSM. And, lastly, head to thegamehouse.com, head to the TSM page. You can see a lot of my takeaways and different pieces. I'm trying to do some new pieces here soon. This week's been a little crazy because there's just been a lot to do. Like today, especially, is going to be a long one for me. A lot of meetings, but hey, that's all right. I'm still going to be on my TSM grind, trying to get as much content out as I can. And with that, thank you for tuning in. This is the last show that will come out just on Thursday. As a reminder, we will have new shows that come out on Monday and Thursday. And they are still exclusively for your TSM ear holes. I'm Robert Haynes. This has been Talking TSM. See you next week.